This is a Tappen self-cleaning gas oven, model number 30-4987-00. This stove was manufactured in 1987, and it's got a problem. Specifically, the igniter on one of the burners isn't working. First, a little history of the Tappen brand name. It has been around for many decades, and it was a rather innovative company at one time. And in fact, they made the first microwave oven. In 1979, they were bought out by the Swedish company Electrolux. And Electrolux bought out a number of other brand names, including Frigidaire and White Westinghouse and several others, and rolled it all up into a brand they called WCI. When this stove was made, they were using the brand name WCI. I believe in 1991, the brand name was changed to Frigidaire. In summary, you're not going to see appliances with the brand name Tappen any longer. The problem with the stove here is that something called the igniter switch has failed. Now, there's lots of videos on YouTube about replacing broken igniter switches. The reason I made this one is there are no videos about igniter switches and this particular brand name or model number. I could not find really any information on this particular make and model on YouTube at all, and so I decided to make my own. And it does work a little bit differently than some of the others, so I thought if you have one of these, perhaps this video could help you. Now, adjacent to the burner here is a little device called an igniter, and it works a lot like a spark plug. It's driven by a high voltage, and when you turn the knob, you energize this thing. You can see that spark right there, and that's what starts the flame. The stove has 4 burners, and each burner has its own control knob. The igniters on all 4 of these burners will flash. The problem is this left front burner here. This is the one where it doesn't spark. If I turn this knob, gas is coming out, but none of them are sparking. If I turn any of the others, I get gas and I get a spark. Now that tells me that the problem is not in the ignition module, rather it is in this ignition switch. Each one of these control knobs has an ignition switch. So we know the other 3 ignition switches are good, it's just this one. So we just have to get at that one and replace it. Now before we do anything, we should turn off the electricity to the stove. Now, one way to do that would be to just simply pull the plug from behind, and that would do it. This stove is kind of a little crammed in there. It would be a little difficult to get at that. But in my case, it's probably easier just to throw the circuit breaker. In my case, that controls the stove and the refrigerator and a couple lights in the hallway. Since we're not going to be here too long, I think it's okay to de-energize the refrigerator for a few minutes. And we will know the power will be cut off when the electroluminescent display goes out. Now in my fuse box, it happens to be circuit breaker number 11, and that should do it. The electroluminescent display is now out, so we know the stove has been de-energized. The designers at Tappen made this rather easy for us. We will start by simply removing the grates, and then we remove the 4 pans. And now we can lift up the top. It's hinged and it's held up with a couple of supports. You just grab it here and lift. Oh, isn't that convenient? Now we are going to remove the 4 control knobs. They're on there kind of tight. You just have to kind of slide them off. They may not have been moved in many years. They might be kind of stiff. Okay, well, and off they come. And now we have to remove this item here that the manual calls the trim manifold. And it's held on 3 screws on the top and 4 screws on the bottom. Now, in addition, there are these screws at the very end, here and here, and also underneath, there and there. You don't want to remove those. Those just fix these little caps on the end. Okay, you don't need to take those off in order to remove the manifold. We'll just go ahead and we will remove those screws. Now, in order to remove the 4 lower screws, we have to open the oven door to gain access. And we've got 4 screws. And then there's 2 screws on the very end, which you can leave alone. We'll go ahead and remove those screws now. Now the 7 screws holding on the manifold have been removed. Now we can pull off the manifold. And we can see those other screws on the very end, these 2 screws on the end. These are fine thread screws, and they just hold on these caps here. Now, since our problem is only on this control, we can go ahead and pull the dial from this one and leave the others alone. It's on there kind of tight. You got to give it a pretty good pull. You might have to work it a little bit. And we expose this little device here. This is our igniter switch. When you turn this dial, you're opening the gas valve, but you're also activating this switch. They're sort of piggybacked one on top of the other. We can just slide it out like that, and that's our switch. Now, the really nice thing about this particular switch is you can remove just the switch for just the one control. In a lot of stove designs, all 4 switches are hooked up in series and you have to remove all 4 of them. But in this case, you only have to remove just the one. And it's got connectors on here that are just simply pull off like so and like so. What could be easier than that? Now here's our igniter switch on the bench, and it has this part number on it, 695T225P01, and I've got a replacement for it, nearly identical. Now it has a part number 318035200. Now this part comes in many different part numbers, but they all seem to be identical. There's lots of these for sale on eBay. You'll find I picked this one only because it was the cheapest one. Just for fun, I thought I would hook up this switch to an ohm meter and just see what happens when I turn this guy. It should close the switch here. There we go. All right, that's what a working switch looks like. We'll go ahead and insert it into the stove now. Okay, so here's our new switch. We'll connect our connectors. We'll slide the switch into place. And there it is. We will slide the dial back over it. We will then put our manifold back on. Slide that manifold back on. This is kind of a tight fit. The manifold on, we can now lower the top. We will put on the 4 pans. We will put on the 4 grates. Now put the 4 knobs back on. And we will now flip the circuit breaker and re-energize the circuit. We will now throw the circuit breaker. The electroluminescent clock is flashing because it had been powered down. So I'm going to have to reset the clock. But let's see how our burner did. When I turn this, I should get a click and the flame should start. And there it is, folks. We now have a working igniter switch once again. So that's it, a very simple repair. The switch cost me $20. And as you can see, it's a very easy switch. You don't need any special tools, just a simple Phillips head screwdriver and 10 minutes of your time. If this does happen to you, there's a very simple workaround. If you turn the gas on to one and then you turn the switch on to another one, and that will do it. And I've been doing that for quite a while, but I just finally got fed up with it and decided just to go ahead and fix it.